Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. Today is our group learning program where I spend time with students each Sunday and Wednesday to be able to help them on the path to enlightenment, understanding the topics that you would need to know in order to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. Today's topic is chapter 3 of this book, where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, and chapter 3 is titled Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? So I'm going to be helping you guys to understand what enlightenment is, and I'll be sharing that with you in a way that I'll be teaching, and then you guys will be able to ask questions, and we'll be able to help you to be able to gain more wisdom about what this enlightened mental state is and how one would actually attain it as well. The way that we start our classes is we start with meditation. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start is with some chanting to ease into the meditation. So if you'd like to chant along, we have chanting sheets over there on the cabinet that you're welcome to help yourself to. You'll be able to see the chants that I'm doing. The reason why we do chanting nowadays is to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. This was a learning device. There aren't any rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship or prayer or anything like that in the teachings of the Buddha. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. Yeah, if you'd like to get some sheets, you're more than welcome. For those of you guys online, if you'd like to get these chanting sheets, you can go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and then just scroll down towards the bottom, and you'll be able to see the chanting sheet there. So these chanting during the lifetime of the Buddha was used, as I mentioned, as a learning tool, because everything he taught was oral. The technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world 2,500 years ago. So they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So you can see from the origins of chanting that it's not a rite, a ritual, a ceremony, or worship, or prayer, or anything like that. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't walk around and say, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me. This would be ego. This would be arrogance. This would be putting yourself above other people and looking down on people. And a Buddha wouldn't do that. An enlightened being wouldn't do that. So this is why I suspect that these actually came from his students, because if you learn how to move from anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings that you're going to hear about today that the enlightened mind solves, and you actually get to this peaceful and joyful mental state that is permanent, and there was a teacher that helped you without any expectations of anything in return from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation and respect for that person too. So that's where I suspect these chants actually came from. So you're welcome to chant along as we go. After the chanting, you're going to hear me come in with some guidance to be able to essentially instruct you and guide you during the meditation while we're actually meditating. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and everyone online will just all be meditating. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear an occasional sound here or there. Like you might hear a car go by, you might hear a bird chirping, a dog barking, someone might cough or sneeze here. This is very common. If your mind has a craving for permanent silence, you will cause your mind to be frustrated or annoyed. But if you don't have that, if you just understand that all these things around you are impermanent, things are constantly changing, then your mind can be quite peaceful and joyful when you're experiencing impermanence. So there's never an environment that's going to be permanently quiet. So you're going to hear sounds occasionally. This is very normal. So while you hear those sounds, they're going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. And you can understand that this is just impermanence. This is the way the world works, that there's never a time where you're going to experience permanent silence. So your mind can rest at ease and be peaceful and joyful during that period if you hear any particular sounds during the meditation period. Then we're going to come out of meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand about this topic of enlightenment. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times during your journey to enlightenment, because your body can't be in the same position permanently. It's just not possible. So you kind of assemble a tool belt as part of your journey to enlightenment. And one of the things that you're doing doing is learning about these different positions because you're going to need them at different times during your meditation practice. Oftentimes people are learning in the seated position, so I'll share some guidance with you on the seated position just to kind of be recommendations for you, some things to consider. Oftentimes people are learning in the seated position, and it's oftentimes a primary position for people to meditate in. So you could sit on the floor, you could sit in a chair, there's people maybe at home that's sitting on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you're comfortable. What I'm sharing with you are just things for you to consider. There's not just one way to actually sit during your meditation. So if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This is oftentimes what people like to do. It kind of softens the seat a little bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you like to do that just lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it'll impede the circulation and it can cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So it allows the circulation to flow. So you might consider doing something like that. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If you'd like to use this and it's comfortable for you, wonderful. But there's other options for you to consider as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And it's the same thing for anybody who's in a chair or on a bench or sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you're comfortable as well. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me here sitting in a chair with my legs crossed. So this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if your sternum is up and your shoulders are back. This is going to keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. The meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you would like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert, and it'll also make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in, and then I'm going to come back in with the guidance at that point. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma สติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go, Anytime the mind moves off the breath, you have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโหตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเตมิ สวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมดามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. As I was sharing, today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I meet with students to help them understand the path to enlightenment. We use this first book of our book series as a guide for this program, where each Sunday I do a talk in the book, and then on Wednesdays I do meditation with students and open up to any and all questions that you might have. Right now, we're entering into the real heart of this book. We just recently restarted this program. We're on chapter 3 today, where chapters 3 through chapters 11 are the real heart of the book. This particular chapter is titled Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? This is where you start to understand what this mental state is that the Buddha actually taught, because in order for you to make your way to this mental state, you would need to know a bit about it. You wouldn't be able to make your way to enlightenment if you didn't understand what enlightenment is. So here at the very beginning of the book, I help students to understand what is enlightenment. It's kind of like if you were going to take a journey to a particular city, like say somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, would you like to go to Chiang Rai?" The first thing you'd be probably asking them is, what is Chiang Rai? What is that? And then they'd be like, oh, it's the city up to the north. It's about 3 hours from Chiang Mai. You got to go over the mountains. When you get there, there's this mall. There's all these temples, so forth and so on. And you'd be like, oh, okay, I understand. And now you're going to make a decision whether or not you'd like to go there. And then if you're planning to go to Chiang Rai, you'd be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then once you arrive, you'd actually know that you've actually gotten there. Well, it's the same thing with enlightenment. If you're going to navigate your way to this enlightenment mental state, you need to know a bit about what it is so you can more easily navigate your way to it. And then once you actually attain enlightenment, you'll know that you've actually attained it. So that's why here at the very beginning of the book, chapter 3, I help students to understand what enlightenment is. So I'm going to be walking you guys through this chapter, helping you guys to understand what's in the book. But it's always wise to actually read the book as well, because there's certain things in the book that aren't in these classes that I teach, and there's certain things in the classes that aren't in the books. So if you would like to get a version of this book, you can actually get it at no cost. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for our printing costs, so we can use that to go purchase more books, or you can get it on Amazon. And if you'd like to track along and join into this program, you're more than welcome to. I teach it at 9 a.m. here at the temple, and I live stream it throughout the world. And then I also teach it at 9 p.m. at home, and I live stream it from there as well. So no matter where you are in the world, there should be a live class available for you. And where you can't make the live class, you can watch the recordings, because it's recorded on Facebook, YouTube, and we have a podcast as well. So if you're interested in making your way to this enlightened mental state, all the resources and the ability for you to learn is all available at no cost for you. Not only the classes, courses, retreats, and the books and all these things, but also personal guidance to be able to help you. So as I go, I'm going to be pausing a few times to be able to open up to questions that you guys might have related to what I'm sharing with you. And if you have any questions at any point, you're more than welcome to ask those, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. If you're here at the temple, if you could use one of the microphones here in the white bowl, all you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button. You'll see the lights come on, and you can just hold that up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And once you get one of these microphones, if you would like to keep it with you, just keep it with you at your seat, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with other people. And then when you're not using it, if you could just turn it off, that way we won't get feedback through the speakers. For anybody who's online, if you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, and we'll be able to see that in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So in terms of this topic of what is enlightenment, as I was mentioning, it's really helpful to know this as you're journeying on the path. At the very beginning of your journey, you'd like to know a bit about what this mental state is to decide whether it's even something you're interested in working towards, and so you could more easily navigate your way to it. One of the first things to understand is it's quite a challenge to understand what enlightenment is, as long as the mind is in the unenlightened state, because it's kind of like if I were to sit here and describe chocolate ice cream to you, and you've never had chocolate ice cream in your entire life, I could sit here and describe it to you all day long. And at the end of the conversation, you would know more about chocolate ice cream than you did before the conversation started, but you wouldn't fully understand what chocolate ice cream tastes like until you experience it for yourself and you actually taste it. So our conversation here today, to help you understand enlightenment, you're going to know much more about it after our conversation than right now at the beginning. But just understand, you're not going to know everything there is to know about what the enlightened mental state is at the end of today's conversation. So just understand it's quite a challenge for the unenlightened mind to understand what enlightenment is. But I'm going to help you as best I can to explain it to you, and then let you guys ask any and all questions that you like about this enlightened mental state. This is the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha, is getting to this enlightened mental state. And asking questions to understand is a very important part of this path to enlightenment. So at any point, if you guys have questions, just let me know. So what enlightenment is it's a mental state that you attain during this life, or you can attain it at death as well, where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind will be calm and relaxed, but yet attentive and alert. The mind will be unshakable. It'll be steady. It'll be focused and concentrated. You will no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are completely eliminated from the mind. Oftentimes people think that these feelings are actually being caused by other people. That might be what you think right now. But next week in chapter 4, I'm going to explain to you what's called the Four Noble Truths. These are 4 statements that the Buddha shares with you as teachings that you can independently verify, where you can see what's actually causing your anger and your sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. It's not anything external. It's actually what's going on in your own mind. There are certain causes and conditions in your mind that is producing these discontent feelings. And that's why you can actually eliminate them. Because if it was everybody else who was causing these discontent feelings, like if it was your mom and dad, your boss, your brothers and sisters who were frustrating you and annoying you, you would never be able to get rid of it. You would be stuck. You wouldn't be able to actually get to peace and joy. So the Buddha didn't go around and teach other people to do things in order for him to get to peacefulness. He didn't give people rules and commandments to follow. He didn't give them a bunch of beliefs to believe in. He actually taught you exactly what's causing these feelings in your mind in a way that you can independently verify it. And when you independently verify it and you see the truth that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then he provides you the tools and techniques of how to uproot those causes and conditions out of your mind so that then you can actually experience the peace and joy of the enlightened mental state. So someone who's gotten to enlightenment will no longer experience any discontent feelings. This is occurring through freeing the mind of something called craving, anger, and ignorance. This is the high-level way of referring to the pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. He discovered 10 individual pollutions. I'm going to introduce you to those 10 pollutions here in a little bit. They're referred to as the 10 fetters. But when we talk about them from a high level, we refer to them as craving, anger, and ignorance. Craving is where the mind is longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting things to be a certain way. And if you get things your way, you experience pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. It's very pleasant for you to experience that. But that's based on some condition. Your mind is getting what it wants, what you're expecting, what you're longing for. But if you don't get what you want, if you don't get what you're expecting, if you don't get your craving, your desire, your longing, your yearning fulfilled, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, things like this. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. This is like shyness or uncomfortableness or displeasure in the mind. So the mind is causing its own discontent feelings from this craving, from this longing, yearning. The mind is craving for things to be a certain way permanently. So for example, if it's sunny outside and you really want it to be sunny because you're planning to go outside for a hike, for example, you'll be really excited when you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny. You'll be so excited. But then when you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining, you'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated or annoyed. It's your own mind that's causing this because the mind's craving for that sun to be permanent. It's wanting and expecting it to be there. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because your mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition that if it's sunny, I'll be happy. But the sun is not permanent, and that's why your happiness is not permanent. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, then when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. This is the mind craving permanence. It's wanting your bank account to be a certain level. And you can see here that it's not other people that are causing you to be angry or frustrated because there's nobody else involved. It's just the sun and rain, right? It's just your bank account going up and down. You're the one that's controlling your bank account. So it's not other people that are causing these feelings. It's the mind itself, based in this craving, this desire, this longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, expecting it to be a certain way. Again, if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, and others. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or some other painful feeling. And when that anger is arising, the mind firmly thinks, it firmly believes that other people are causing you to feel this way. And what the mind will tend to do with its lack of wisdom is it'll push people away, or it'll push the situation away. You might have done this with friends or family where you've pushed people out of your life thinking that that was going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get angry. You still get frustrated. You still get annoyed. If this person or this situation was the true cause of your problem, when you push them away, you'd be completely peaceful. But you can see that that's not the case. When you push people out of your life, you still get angry, you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated. That helps you to see that that's not the real cause of your anger. Or the second thing you'll do when you firmly believe that the problem is external is you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, or your actions. It's almost like an animal growling or roaring at another animal, trying to fear that being into doing things your way. Because the mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. The mind thinks if I can just get things my way, everything will be perfect. So the mind is trying to fear this other being into doing things a certain way. Or you might put your expectations on people, trying to pressure them or control them to do things your way. And as long as the mind's doing this, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. You might notice you're having broken relationship after broken relationship after broken relationship. Because when you're pushing people away, or you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile, or you're putting expectations on people, you can't live with all beings harmoniously. It's only a matter of time before you encounter someone who's doing something different than what you expect because of impermanence. Not everybody's going to do things your way. There's only one person in the world who does things your way, and that's you. Right? So it's only a matter of time before that friend you have, or that boyfriend or girlfriend, or that family member, or that coworker does things differently than you because of impermanence. So if you can only be peaceful and joyful around people who do things your way, you're the only person who does things your way. And you would have a very hard time to live in harmony and live in peace among people who are doing things differently than you. So the Buddha is teaching you how to eliminate this craving and anger, because as long as you have that in there, it's going to motivate unskillful conduct. And the reason why that craving and anger exists in the mind is because of ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom. That's why none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. Because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it. So the Buddha encourages you to investigate and examine his teachings, to reflect on them, to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then to practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life so that you can transform your mind and you can uproot these pollutions out of the mind. This is the purification of the mind. So while enlightenment itself is a mental state that you're experiencing as a result of getting rid of these pollutions, the path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind, where you're purifying the mind of these pollutions that the Buddha discovered. Sometimes people describe enlightenment as happiness or ultimate bliss. While there's plenty of happiness in the mental state of enlightenment, I don't describe it as happiness or ultimate bliss, because this is what one experiences when they move into what's called the jhanas. The jhanas are preliminary phases that the mind goes through before it gets to the first stage of enlightenment. I'm going to teach you guys the 4 stages of enlightenment, but there's these preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to that first stage of enlightenment. These preliminary phases are called the jhanas, and this is where you're experiencing enhanced qualities of mind. And one of the things you experience when the mind's moving into the jhanas is this bliss, this excitement, this, happiness. Some people describe it as ultimate happiness. And some people will think that they're actually enlightened when they get to the jhanas, because what you experience in the jhanas is like night and day compared to what it is that you experience when you're off the path to enlightenment to what you're experiencing when you're actually in the jhanas. So some people, when they're experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind, it's something that they never fathomed would even be possible, and they think that they're actually enlightened. And they're describing what they're experiencing as enlightenment. So you might hear some people tell you that enlightened beings still get frustrated, or they still get angry, or they still get irritated or annoyed. This isn't true. It's absolutely not true. But what's happening is this person might be experiencing the jhanas, thinking that they're enlightened, and they're explaining what they're experiencing as enlightenment. Because they still experience anger and frustration, they think that their mind is enlightened, and now they're describing what they're experiencing as enlightenment. But enlightened beings don't experience any anger or sadness or any of these other discontent feelings. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're beyond the conditionality of these feelings of pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant, the happiness, excitement, elation. You're beyond that you're now experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned mental state where the mind is joyful and it's uplifted, it's glad, there's cheerfulness in the mind. Where in the unenlightened state, you can only be happy if certain conditions are met. If the weather is this, if my bank account is this, if my mom and dad do this, if my boss does this, if my life partner does this, if my children do this, if I have this type of house and this type of car and this type of salary, then I will be happy. So your happiness actually shrinks in the unenlightened state because there's all these expectations that the mind has, all these conditions. These are called conditioned happiness, that there needs to be certain conditions that are true, and then you'll be happy. This is why you can't be permanently happy right now. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is beyond that your mind can be happy regardless of what's happening around you. You can even experience the death of somebody close to you, like your mother or your father, or your brothers or sisters, and your mind would still be joyful, it'd still be cheerful. Because what's causing the grief and sadness at the time of death is not your love. It's not love that's causing that. It's the mind's craving. The mind is craving for mom and dad to be permanent, or it's craving for grandma and grandpa to be permanent, when in reality they are impermanent. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you are beyond the conditionality of these feelings where your mind's going up and down, up and down, up and down. Your mind can maintain its peace and joy, its cheerfulness, its gladness. It can be bright and uplifted, despite the fact that mom has died, despite the fact that brother or sister has died. Even though people around you are going to die, your mind will understand impermanence, that these beings are not permanent, and you won't be clinging to them and holding on to them, craving for them to be permanent. You're not basing your inner feelings on whether this person is alive or not. Because if the person's alive, your craving's getting fulfilled, you're happy in the unenlightened state. But if they're not alive, your mind's not getting what it wants and what it expects, so therefore it experiences the painful feelings. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're beyond all of that. Your mind can maintain its peace and joy regardless. So I don't describe enlightenment as happiness, although there's plenty of happiness, but it's unconditional happiness, which is not something that you might be used to right now. Right now, you're probably used to, yay, I'm so happy, yay, I got a raise at work today, or yay, I'm going to Thailand, yay, I can't wait to get on that airplane. It's going to be so much fun to get those massages and the mango and sticky rice and all those things that are in Thailand. Oh, I just can't wait. It's going to be so great. That's not the same type of happiness that you're experiencing in the enlightened mental state. That's conditioned happiness. The mind's almost bouncing off the walls. It's like unstable and unsteady. The happiness that you're experiencing in the enlightened mental state is where the mind is bright and joyful and uplifted, and there's no condition that needs to be met in order for that to occur. That the mind is just in that mental state permanently. So this is a little bit about what enlightenment is. The advantages of enlightenment is that the mind, as I mentioned, will be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. This is a permanent mental state that you will be experiencing all the way through the end of this life. It's impossible for the enlightened mind to experience anything like anger, sadness, frustration, and any of these other discontent feelings. It doesn't matter what's occurring. Your mind can be joyful and bright and uplifted at all times. There's a high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind because you've eliminated the pollutions of the mind. So when the mind is plagued with those pollutions, it's going to be burdened with carrying around that. So this is where you'll lack concentration and focus and clarity. But by the time you purify your mind will be performing optimally. And as I've mentioned a few times, you won't be experiencing any of these discontent feelings. All of that will be eliminated from the mind because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing it, those pollutions of craving, anger, and ignorance. But more specifically, the 10 fetters. You'll notice that you have deep wisdom about the world around you. That's what the mind is able to cultivate as part of the journey to enlightenment. You'll notice that you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody. Right now, you probably find that to be a challenge. If somebody does things your way, you might like them, right? You might be able to be polite and kind and friendly and respectful. But if they don't do things the way you want them to do it, this is where you may be impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful. But this is coming from your own mind. It's not coming from that person. Sometimes when we like somebody, we think it's them that's causing us to like them. Or if you dislike someone, you might think that it's that person who's causing you to dislike them. But it's actually your own mind. It's your expectations of wanting this person to be a certain way. The mind has a certain template that it imagines that everybody should be this way. And if everybody's that way and certain people are that way around you, you like them. But when people don't meet those criteria, you dislike them, right? This is the mind causing this itself. But by the time you understand the world around you and you've trained your mind, you understand everybody's different. This is impermanence. It's normal. And you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. And that isn't contingent on anything whatsoever. It's unconditioned. You can treat everybody polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. You're not causing any harm in the world. And because of this, being polite, kind, friendly, respectful, and not causing harm to others, you'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. That right now you might have certain hostility and aggression and irritation and annoyance in some of your relationships. You might have hostility or resentment in those relationships. Oftentimes people blame it on the other person. We think that it's mom is the problem or dad's the problem. And you might be trying to change those people, but it's coming from your own mind. You can get to the point where you understand mom and dad do things differently than you. And that's normal. That's impermanence. You can disagree with the person, their decisions that they're making, while still loving the person themselves. But if you can only love someone who does things your way, there's only one person that you can love. But if you understand that the decisions that someone makes is different than the person themselves, that now you can love the person while disagreeing with the choices and decisions. Because you'll never agree with everybody's choices and decisions. You're never going to agree with those. So if you can only be polite, kind, friendly, respectful with people you agree with, then you're not going to be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everyone. So by the time you get to enlightenment, all your personal, professional relationships will be conducted with ease. You won't even be in a bad mood anymore. It's impossible for an enlightened being to actually experience a bad mood. So these are some of the advantages of enlightenment. The way to attain enlightenment is through learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. What you do is you learn these core central teachings first. This is like the foundational teachings. And this is what I'm going to be teaching over the next several weeks in this program. The 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts. I'm going to be teaching all of these things. The Brahma Viharas is part of chapter 14 in this program. These are 4 healthy mental states. Loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. These are antidoting certain challenges that are in the mind. So you're going to need to arise these wholesome qualities in order to get rid of the unwholesome qualities. And we're going to talk about that when we get to chapter 14. The 10 fetters is something that an individual needs to learn to get to enlightenment. These are the 10 pollutions of the mind. I'm going to introduce you to those here in a moment. And then there's the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is like a tool to fine-tune the mind. This isn't to determine whether you are enlightened or aren't enlightened. This is actually a tool that's going to fine-tune your mind, bringing it from an excited state into the middle and bringing it from a sluggish and dull and lethargic state into the middle. And then there's extensive meditation training. And there's things beyond this too, but this is just the core central teachings that someone focuses on when they first get started. And as I mentioned, all the teachings of the Buddha are based on you learning them, examining them, and investigating them. They're then reflecting on those teachings in order to independently verify them, and then you're practicing his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. This is how you cultivate wisdom, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You need to be able to cultivate wisdom to be able to get the mind to enlightenment. As an individual on the path to enlightenment, an individual is their own individual practitioner. They are on their own journey to enlightenment, where a teacher is kind of like a tour guide pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and grow and understand and develop, but it's each individual student that's choosing to do that learning and that growth. So the teacher is just a tour guide pointing things out for you. So you're not a follower or a devotee or anything like that. You're your own independent practitioner, actively looking to cultivate wisdom about the world around you, and a teacher is essentially pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and providing you the ability to do that. So you're doing this cultivation of wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing the teachings. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions before I go further into this talk, because next I'm going to introduce you to the 10 fetters, these 10 pollutions that are in the mind. But I'd like to see if you guys have any questions on anything that I've shared so far. So remember here, if you guys would like to get a microphone here, that would be great. Just take it back to your seat with you. And anybody who's online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. So it looks like we have a couple people here that are going to ask questions. So whoever's first, you guys are welcome to go ahead. And again, welcome to all of you guys online. I see there's many people here today, so welcome to all of you guys. Kayla, you have a question?
So sometimes I cry, but I feel deeply at peace. Could be like watching a movie, or or I don't know, reading a book, or would that be part of enlightenment?
It is possible for an enlightened being to cry, but because the reason why is because the mind is one thing and the body is something different. The body is all the bodily actions, and crying is a bodily action that's typically associated with something going on in the mind, but not always, right? So an individual could actually cry with joy, right? That they're not sad, they're not upset, they're not angry, none of that stuff. There's no sorrow or grief or anything like that. So it is possible for an enlightened being to cry, but they would be crying with joy. There's something that's so funny, for example, you could actually be crying, right? But you're not going to be sorrowful during the crying. So the individual practitioner needs to look at the mind and see what's going on. Crying, if someone was crying out of grief or sorrow or sadness, this is the mind's craving, desire, attachment, that the mind is craving for things to be a certain way. It's not that way. So there's sorrowfulness in the mind, there's grief in the mind, and then now the body is going to cry because of that. But the body can also cry due to joy in the mind. Terrence?
Hello. Yes. I can't remember exactly. It was one of the slides, David, where it showed how we might attain enlightenment. And one of the final things that was said was perhaps even also attainable at death. Yes, that last phrase in point number 1. What's that about? Who attains enlightenment at death rather than these other ways?
Sure. So ideally, you would actively learn and grow and develop on the path while you're alive, because then whatever point you get to enlightenment, you'll enjoy the rest of your life in that enlightened mental state. And that requires a certain amount of effort and work and attention to your practice. It's not a one-day thing, or 1 week, 1 month, or even 1 year. It's a multi-year journey, but you'll see the gradual improvement because there's gradual learning, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It's not like one day you're enlightened and then there's a light switch and it's not like one day you're unenlightened and then instantly you're enlightened the next second. It's not instantaneous. It's gradual. So you'll see the qualities of enlightenment start to shine through more and more. So if you think about it, we call it attaining enlightenment, but one of the ways to think about it is the mind is already enlightened. And it's kind of like the sun, and there's clouds in front of the sun. And as the clouds kind of peel away, then the rays of the sun shine through more and more. So it's kind of like when you peel away these pollutions of the mind, more and more the qualities of enlightenment shine through. So this is the ideal thing, is that if you actively learn and practice during your life, you can see the progress, you can see the improvement, and ultimately you'll get to a point where everything's completely peaceful. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, there's no anger, no frustration. The mind's completely peaceful and joyful, experiencing all these qualities. But for somebody who's in the process of either getting to enlightenment, or even people who don't even know the teachings of the Buddha, never studied them whatsoever, natural death tends to lean towards enlightenment. As I get ready to introduce you to these 10 pollutions, you can see that as we age, we tend to start eliminating these pollutions kind of naturally. So like one of the first pollutions is personal existence view, which I think you've been exposed to before. You've heard me talk about how the mind clings to the self-image and the self-identity, wanting other people to perceive you in a certain way. Well, as we age, that's one of the things that tends to go away, right? Or like you've heard about sensual desire and the craving for sex and things like this. As we age, that tends to be something that fades away. And therefore, because our sensual desire is diminishing, our anger and hatred and ill will tends to diminish too as we age. Not for everybody, but for some people. So if somebody kind of leans towards natural death and their mind is going through the process of eliminating these pollutions, an individual can experience enlightenment at death. It's not ideal to think about that in terms of, oh, that's what I'm going to do, because you'll end up spending your whole life being frustrated and annoyed and agitated, and you don't necessarily know that you're going to get to enlightenment at death as well. So it would be much wiser to actively learn and grow and develop on the path and actually make your way to enlightenment. Okay, let me see if we have any questions here online. I don't see any online. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is introduce you to these 10 fetters. These are the 10 pollutions that the Buddha discovered, and this is what he's guiding you to uproot and eliminate out of your mind. Now, when I share these with you, I'm going to share with you what they are and some of the symptoms of them, and I'll even share with you some of the solutions. When you're learning about this, it's important that you don't believe what I share. You're going to hear me when I'm explaining these, that I'm going to be explaining some of the things that you experience. This is how you're going to be able to verify that your mind actually has these pollutions. Because remember, you're not interested in believing any of these teachings. So when I'm explaining the symptoms that you experience because of these pollutions, that's your way of knowing that, yeah, this is true, that your mind actually has these, because I've never met many of you, and I'll be able to explain to you the things that you experience on a day-to-day basis because of these pollutions. So we refer to them as the pollutions or the taints or the defilements or the fetters. The Buddha referred to them as the fetters, and he used these other ways to refer to them as well, but he called them the fetters because during his lifetime, if you were a criminal and they were trying to keep you in a certain area, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. This was a shackle and a chain and a ball, and they would just keep you in a field, an open field, and this would keep you confined to that area. Where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells, and that's how we keep them contained in a certain area. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would put a fetter on your ankle, a shackle and a chain and a ball. So when the Buddha discovered these 10 pollutions, he calls them fetters because it keeps the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, continuing to experience anger and frustration and sadness over and over and over and over again, all these discontent feelings. And it's when you free the mind of these fetters, just like you free the prisoner of the fetter, that the prisoner is now free. The mind is now free when you get rid of these pollutions, that you no longer are bound up to experience all this discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So it's the elimination of these 10 fetters that actually leads to enlightenment. This is what you're purifying the mind of, is these 10 fetters. Craving, anger, and ignorance is a high-level way to refer to it, but we refer to them in detail as the 10 fetters. So personal existence view, which I'm going to teach in more detail at different times throughout this program, what this is where the mind has confusion, it has misunderstanding, it clings to this physical body or this mind, it clings to the self-image or your self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when you're being perceived that way, you feel happy. When you're not being perceived by that way, you might feel angry or sad or embarrassed or some other discontent feeling. So for example, if you've ever been to a social situation and you spilt something on your clothing and you were embarrassed, this is the mind's personal existence view. It's clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are, your self-image, and wanting other people to perceive you in a certain way. And when you're being perceived that way, you're happy. But when you're not being perceived that way, in this example, you're embarrassed. If you've ever been in front of your closet thinking, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to appear? And you're thinking about the different clothes that you're going to wear, and you're grabbing certain clothing to wear specifically because you want to look a certain way in that environment, that's your mind's personal existence view. You might have even put on clothes, looked in the mirror, and you're like, nah, that's not how I want to look. You put on a different set of clothes, nah, that's not how I want to look. And then you put on a third set, and you're like, all right, cool, now I can go outside. I feel comfortable to go outside, right? Or like me, when I was a child, and I was a teenager growing up, I would get gel and mousse and all these different things and run it through my hair, try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I would go off to school. And sometimes I would do this so long I would miss the school bus on the way to school, right? Because I wanted every little hair in exactly the right spot, and I didn't feel comfortable to go outside unless I did that. Or you might have looked in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple. Or you might have saw a gray hair. You might have noticed you're losing your hair, and you might have been shaken up by that. That's your personal existence view. Clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you only felt comfortable if you were being perceived that way. Then there's also not only the self-image that the mind will cling to because of personal existence view, but the self-identity. What this is in your mind, there's a certain way that you identify as who you are as a person. like I am Spanish, or I am Ecuadorian, or I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Chinese, or I am a Brit, or I am an Aussie, or any of this I am around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You might cling to these things as who you think you are as a person. And now, once again, if you're experiencing what you want in terms of how people perceive you, you experience a certain feeling of pleasant feelings. But then if you're not experiencing that, you'll get the painful feelings. So for example, if you were at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody said, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle, or all Chinese people, or all Aussies or Brits, or wherever you're from, and they were talking very favorably of your nationality that you have in your mind, you'd be like, wow, they're talking about me. Wow, that's great. They're talking favorably about me. But now 2 tables over, somebody's talking in degrading and disparaging ways about the country that you come from. Now you might be frustrated or angry or irritated, and you can't control what other people say or what other people do. So as long as your mind clings to this identity of who you think you are based on your nationality, it's only a matter of time before that gets triggered where now you're upset or frustrated. Or say you've ever been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you identified with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife, or something of this nature. When you guys were together, you might have felt a certain level of comfort. But then when you guys broke up, you might have been angry or frustrated or irritated. And now when you were single, the mind didn't identify that way. It didn't identify with I am single. It identified with I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend. And the mind thought the way to solve this is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship, because the mind thinks that that's going to solve it, because it wants to reassume this identity of I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, where in reality that's not going to solve it, because it's this pollution of personal existence view clinging to the idea that I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend. And you can only feel comfortable when you're in a relationship. When you're outside of a relationship, the mind doesn't identify with I am single. So there's any number of things that the mind can cling to, thinking that this is who you are. And I'll give you many examples of this over the course of this program. Then there's doubt. What doubt is where the mind is doubting the teachings of the Buddha and their ability to attain enlightenment. It's very common for people to have doubt when they come to the path to enlightenment. If you have doubt right now, it's very normal, but it will hinder you and block you from experiencing enlightenment. The way that someone has doubt is that they might doubt the Buddha, whether this person even existed. They might doubt his teachings and their ability of them to get to enlightenment. They might doubt the community that they're part of and whether these people will actually be helpful for you to be able to get to enlightenment. You might doubt your teacher and this person's ability to help you and guide you on the path. You might doubt your own ability. You might think, I can't do that. That's for other people. It's not me. I can't do it. Right? So if you have doubt about any of these things, it will block you from getting to enlightenment. But you don't eliminate your doubt through blind belief or faith. That's not how you eliminate it. The way you eliminate it is through investigation and examination of the teachings. When you investigate and examine the teachings and you're reflecting on them, you'll be able to independently verify that they're true. And when you're practicing the Buddhist teachings, you're integrating them into your day-to-day life, and you're seeing that they're actually working to produce a more peaceful and joyful mind, a more peaceful and joyful life. You're noticing your relationships improving. You'll know that these teachings are improving your way of life in your mind. You won't be enlightened yet by the time you eliminate your doubt, but you'll be well on your way because you will have seen significant progress to the condition of your mind in your life. But if you have doubt, it will hinder you from getting to enlightenment. So the Buddha is teaching you as part of the journey is to never believe his teachings, because that won't eliminate your doubt. Because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. But if you examine the teachings and you investigate them, you'll be able to reflect on them to see that they're true, and then you'll be able to integrate them into your life and actually practice them. And this is where you actually eliminate your doubt, because you'll be in situations where you were once angry and frustrated and irritated, but you're not experiencing that anymore. Same exact situation, but your mind's quite peaceful and joyful, and you'll know that it's these teachings that are working to help you. So the way that you can use this doubt in a helpful and beneficial way is you can actually harness it and turn it into an inquisitive mind, where maybe right now you say to yourself, yeah, I have doubt, right? Maybe you have doubt about these teachings. Great, have doubt. But now harness it. Sink your teeth in, really investigate the teachings and examine them. That's what's going to help you, because now you can turn that doubt into an inquisitive mind and be like, yeah, I don't know whether the teachings of the Buddha lead to enlightenment or not. Let me find out. And now when you investigate them, that's going to help you along the path, and it's going to help you eliminate this doubt. Wrong behavior and observances, what this is that there's a certain amount of moral conduct that you have right now in terms of your speech and your actions, maybe even your livelihood, the way you support yourself, that is unwise. And when you put out that unwise moral conduct, there's unwholesome results that come back to you. Maybe you're bitter and harsh and hostile in certain situations. Maybe you're aggressive and resentful. Maybe you talk in unwise ways. Maybe you gossip or slander. Maybe you lie sometimes. Maybe you do other things like this, right? And as long as you're doing these unwise moral conduct, then this is all going to come back to you. It's kind of like if a pipe busted and it was spewing oil all over the world. Well, the first thing you like to do is shut down the pipe so that it's no longer spewing oil over the world. You're not going to go clean up the mess on the floor. You're going to shut down the pipe so you're not spewing this oil all over the world. So as long as you're putting out unwholesome moral conduct, then that's all going to come back to you. So if you look at your relationships where you're bitter and harsh and hostile, you're going to see that those people are that way with you too. And you'll never clean up your mind and clean up your life as long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, because it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Sometimes people think they're justified in the way that they treat other people and being bitter and harsh and hostile, but it's your own mind that's causing that, and it's just causing difficulties and struggles in your life when you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people. That's all just going to come back to you. So the Buddha teaches you moral conduct based on the natural laws, not as rules, not as commandments, but to be able to help you see wise decision making around the way that you interact with people and you treat people. And when you eliminate your wrong behavior, which is to bring your practice up to the level that you see in the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching of the Buddha. When you bring your moral conduct up to that level, you'll have eliminated your wrong behavior, that you're no longer being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, among other things. You won't be practicing the moral conduct perfectly by this point, but you'll have at least brought it up to the level that's in the Eightfold Path. What wrong observances are, this is where an individual might believe that rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, things like this are going to lead to improvement in their day-to-day life. People might be getting water sprinkled on them. They might be taking a wafer on their tongue. They might be drinking some wine, thinking that this ritual is going to somehow produce some beneficial results in their life. If you have done these things in the past or you're currently doing them, you need to be able to understand that it's wisdom that the mind is lacking. And that's the reason why it keeps experiencing the difficulties and struggles in day-to-day life. As long as you don't see that, you might think that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship is going to produce some kind of beneficial results in your life. But when you can see that it's a lack of wisdom that the mind has, and by cultivation of wisdom, you can improve the condition of your mind and can improve condition of your life, you come to understand that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship don't lead to improvement to the condition of your mind or your life. Because there's no amount of water that I could sprinkle on you that's going to help you cultivate wisdom. There's no amount of strings that I can tie on your wrist that is going to help you cultivate wisdom. These are all things that you will see even within Buddhist temples. These aren't the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha died 2,500 years ago. And oftentimes what you see people practicing today is not his actual teachings. So if you see rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, things like this associated with the teachings of the Buddha, that's not his teachings. He's teaching you to be able to see true reality, that it's the lack of wisdom that the mind has. That's what's causing it to experience difficulties and struggles. That stress and anxiety, that's just because the mind lacks certain wisdom and it has craving and anger in the mind. And as long as somebody's just getting water sprinkled on them, there's no ability for the mind to get training to be able to then understand how to move it closer to this enlightened mental state. So whether somebody does those things or not, it's up to each individual. The Buddha's not telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. He's just helping you to be able to see true reality, that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship don't lead to improvement in your day-to-day life. Maybe you're going to the church or the synagogue or the mosque or or the temple with your family. And maybe they're going to participate in some rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And maybe you even do too, who knows? But your mind needs to understand that these things don't lead to peace and joy. It doesn't lead to a better way of life. It doesn't lead to you making wiser decisions. And that's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to do these types of things or not. But the mind, by the time it's eliminated this particular fetter, it will understand what the true problem is in the mind, which is a lack of wisdom. And then an individual will be actively working to cultivate wisdom to be able to transform their mind. So this is wrong behavior and observances. Then there's something called sensual desire. What this is the mind longing, yearning through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. And when you get what you want through contact through these sense spaces, you will get pleasant feelings. Then when you get contact through these sense spaces that is disagreeable, you will get painful feelings. So for example, let's just take the one with the ears. Let's say you were at a stoplight in your car and someone pulls up next to you with music that you like, and you might be dancing in your seat because you're hearing a sound that is agreeable to you, and your sensual desire is like, oh man, I'm excited, yeah, let's dance, let's have a good time. But then you pull up to the next traffic light and you hear another type of sound that's coming into the ear, music that you don't like, and you see this as disagreeable. Now you're frustrated. Now you're agitated or annoyed. It's not the music that's doing that. And it's not the person who's playing the music. What's causing that discontentedness is your sensual desire, wanting permanently agreeable contact through the ears in this example. Or let's just say you're walking down the street and you smell a flower shop. You walk past the flower shop, you smell the odor of flowers coming out. You're like, oh, wow, that smells so great, man. I'm so excited. Wow, I haven't smelled that for a long time. Brings back memories from my childhood. Wow, oh my goodness, that's so great. But now you walk a few more steps and you smell the sewer coming up into the nose. Ugh. You're repulsed by this, right? Maybe you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed. This is your sensual desire. The mind's craving permanently agreeable contact through your sense spaces. And when you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. And when you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like the anger, sadness, and others. So there's these 6 sense spaces that is experiencing contact. And you could go through all of these and come up with examples. I'll give you an example of the mind, because sometimes people have trouble seeing this one. The examples I can give you are things like, say in the present moment, you're thinking about something from the past. Maybe when you were a child, there was some traumatic event that happened. Maybe it was very painful for you to experience that. Maybe there's some kind of abuse that occurred. And now in the present moment, you're thinking about that thing in the past, and now you're experiencing painful feelings in the present moment. Right? This is the mind forming its inner feelings based on something in the past. And the only thing that's happening is all inside the mind. There hasn't been any contact through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, or the body. It's just the mind itself thinking about something from the past. And it could be something pleasurable or it could be something painful. And now in the present moment, the mind is forming feelings based on that. Sometimes people call this trauma, and they think they're going to be experiencing this for the rest of their life and they can never eliminate it. It's not actually true. You can train your mind to let go of this and get to the point where you're no longer forming inner feelings based on things that happened in the past, either pleasurable or painful. Because as long as your mind keeps doing that, you can't be permanently peaceful and permanently joyful. Because there's things that all of us have experienced in the past that were quite painful for us. And if we continue to form feelings now in the present moment based on those things, you'll never get to peace and joy. And then the same thing can happen for the future, that the mind could be longing, yearning for something pleasurable in the future, or it could be scared or having anxiety or fearful about something that's going to happen in the future. And now in the present moment, you can't experience peace and joy because your mind is forming feelings based on something that it thinks is going to happen in the future. So this is the 6th sense base that the Buddha teaches you, that is also going to cause discontentedness as long as the mind is longing, yearning, and clinging, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll remember that these things happened to you in the past, right? You'll never forget if there was any kind of abuse or something like this. You'll never forget those things, but you won't be forming feelings on them based on today. You won't be forming feelings on them. Your mind will have let that go. So this is a little bit about central desire. And then, as I mentioned, if your mind's getting what it wants, which is the central desires getting fulfilled, your expectations are getting fulfilled, you'll get pleasant feelings. And if you don't get what you want, you'll get painful feelings. And when that is occurring, this is where your ill will can arise. The ill will is like the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility, the resentment. And this is where the mind becomes unskillful. And it will push people away, or it'll push the situation away. It'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or it'll put its expectations on people because it firmly believes that these painful feelings are coming from something external, not realizing its lack of wisdom, that it's actually your central desire that's causing these feelings. So when the essential desire is not getting fulfilled, the ill will can come up. And that's where you become unskillful through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. So there's antidotes and there's ways to fix all of this. But we're not really getting into that today. That's what the whole rest of the program is. But I'm going to pause here before I move on to the next 5 and see if you guys have any questions on any of these 5. Do you guys have any questions here that you'd like to ask about these? For those of you guys online, remember you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, looks like Chris has a question here on Facebook. He says, does personal existence view include central desire? These are 2 separate fetters, but oftentimes when one is involved, it's possible for the other one to be involved too, with any particular bout of discontentedness. Early in practice, it's very rare that it's just one fetter that's at play that's causing you to experience discontentedness. So someone could be experiencing a triggering of their pollution of personal existence view while it also being central desire as well. Does eliminating personal existence view reduce central desire? Not directly, but like I just mentioned, both of those fetters can be involved in any one particular situation. Okay, so pleased to help you there, Chris. Okay, so now I'm going to go on to the next 5. I'm going to explain number 6 and 7 together because they're very similar. What desire for form and desire for formless is where the mind has a longing, yearning, a craving to exist in this world, wanting to hold on to this world, being uninterested in leaving and departing from this world. So desire for form is a desire to exist in one of the formless realms, like the animal realm or the human realm. These realms have physical form. The body of an animal or the body of a human being, there's physical form. So we call these the form realms. And there can be a desire to exist in this realm, holding on and being uncomfortable to leave and depart from this world, where the mind needs to understand that, hey, your existence here, it is impermanent. Every single one of us are going to die. There's no way around that. Every single one of us will experience that. We are all impermanent. We arise, we change, and we fade away. But if we're holding on to this world, as we get closer and closer to death, it'll be very painful for us because we don't want to leave. So someone might even fear death. By the time you've gotten rid of this desire for form, you've eliminated any fear that you have of death. By the time an individual's gotten to enlightenment, they no longer fear death. So desire for form would be to hold on to existence in the animal realm or the human realm. There's some human beings that are like, oh, I wish I was reborn as a bird. It would be so wonderful to fly around and see the world like a bird, right? I used to think that way too. That's why I used it as an example, right? It'd be wonderful to fly around, but now it's like, no, I'm not interested in that, right? Or some people have a desire for formless. They desire to be reborn in the hell realm or the afflicted spirit realm, which is like a ghost, or the heavenly realm, right? I know that you guys may not have independently verified these realms of existence yet, but that is something that you can do. As I mentioned, the teachings of the Buddha don't have any belief, including these realms of existence. You can independently verify that these exist, but you need the wisdom to know how to do that. So there's some people who have a desire to be reborn in hell. Not very many, but there are some that have that, right? Or a desire to be reborn as a ghost. more likely a desire to be reborn in the heavenly realm. These are not permanent existences, but oftentimes people are taught that they are, and they think that the goal in life is to be a really good person, and then there's going to be a being who judges you and sends you to a good place or a bad place, and then you're going to stay there for the rest of eternity. This isn't actually true. None of these realms are permanent, and the goal of the teachings of the Buddha is not to be reborn in heaven. So the Buddha is not giving you a bunch of beliefs and then you hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning and growing and developing now, creating the ideal life for yourself now. We understand that these realms are not permanent, because if you look around the world, nothing around you is permanent. There's a universal truth. Part of the natural laws is impermanence, and things are constantly changing. But sometimes people have been taught and they believe that things like this are permanent. And they think that the ultimate goal is to appease a supreme being in order to be sent to a place that is permanently wonderful like heaven. And this isn't actually true. So sometimes people have a desire for rebirth in these particular realms. And by the time you eliminate these two fetters, you don't have that craving any longer. So you don't have craving for existence, but you don't have craving for non-existence either. Craving non-existence would be to be interested in killing yourself and committing suicide, right? So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're perfectly peaceful and joyful in the present moment. You're not longing, yearning for something after this, and you're not hating this life, wishing you were dead. You're just completely content in the present moment, the life that you've created and the life that you're living. Right? Sometimes we take vacations from our life in the unenlightened state, right? We have a certain life and we're like, oh, I got to get out of here. I need to go to Thailand, man. I need to get out of here. And then you enjoy your vacation so much, but then it's like, oh, I got to go back to my life. Well, you're the one who created that life, right? You're the one that chose that job. You're the one that chose to live at that place. You're the one that chose those friends and your life partner and all the things in your life. So if there's any particular part of your life that you don't particularly care for, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you'll experience different results. So you can get to the point where you're living the ideal life now and you're completely content in the present moment now, rather than longing, yearning for any of these things. Then there's something called conceit. This is oftentimes thought of as the ego. The word ego didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha, so he used personal existence view and conceit to talk about what we refer to as the ego. What conceit is where the mind is measuring and comparing, considering itself to be superior or inferior to other people. This is where your mind's judging other people, looking down on them. And now when you're in a social situation, your mind might constantly be trying to figure out who's above me and who's below me. And now when you think you're above people, you might talk down to them in a certain way, and this damages your relationships. Or if you think you're below somebody, it hinders you from being able to perform in a wonderful way. Like if you went into your boss's office and you were all shaken up and uncalm, and now you're trying to explain the work that you're doing, your boss would probably lack confidence in you because you're all shaken up. So as long as you have this conceit where you're sometimes putting yourself above people, you're probably also putting yourself below people in certain situations. And your mind can't be completely stable and steady and peaceful because it's shaken up in these situations. So you'd like to get to the point where you just see yourself as an equal. Everybody's equal. We're all the same. And you treat everybody exactly the same. Because if you've ever been to a social situation where you're trying to figure out who's above you and who's below you, your mind's like overdrive trying to figure this out. And now you talk to one group of people one way and another group of people another way. And your mind's having this burden of trying to figure this out. Whereas if you just treat everybody the same, you can get to a permanent practice where you're just polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody. So that person that's out there sweeping the streets and the king of Thailand, they're equal, the same thing. Now, other people might think of them as different levels, but it's important for your mind to just think of them the same. You see the person sweeping the street. Hello, ma'am. Hello, sir. How are you? Good morning. Nice to see you. You see the king of Thailand walking down the street, which I doubt you'll do, but if you saw the king of Thailand walking down the street, hello, sir. How are you? Nice to see you, right? Same thing. You just treat everybody equally. Right? So if you are treating some people one way and another group, another people another way, your mind's having to constantly switch and figure this out. Where this is coming from is our animal existences. When we were in the animal world, we needed conceit because we needed this pecking order. We needed to know who's the alpha male and alpha female in our pack of wolves, because they're teaching us how to hunt and how to survive. If we didn't know who the alpha male and alpha female were in our wolf pack, we wouldn't have survived because we wouldn't have learned how to hunt. Or if we were in an elephant herd, if we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd was, we wouldn't have survived. We would have just been roaming around in the jungle. But the matriarch of our herd, she's showing us where the food is, the watering holes, the migration paths. We needed this strong pecking order in the animal realm. That was our survival. But when we come to this human realm, our mind retains that. And now we're looking for this pecking order. And you can get rid of that. You can train your mind to eliminate it. So when you see your mind is judging other people and looking down on them, you'd like to eliminate that and cut that off and realize that it's your conceit. It's you trying to put yourself above other people. And this is just going to hinder you from being able to be loving and kind to all beings. It's going to block you from being able to see true reality, that this is another being in the world that might be struggling just like you. And instead, you can just have love and kindness for this person and have compassion for them rather than judging them in a negative way. Then there's something called restlessness. This is where the mind has overactivity, confusion. If you've ever sit somewhere and you're like bobbing your knee or you're tapping your fingers, this is the overactivity in your mind, and it's coming through in your body where you just can't be still. This is what the mind will have with restlessness, or you just have like an obsessive thought that just keeps going over in your mind over and over and over again. This is the restlessness of the mind. Then the fetter of all fetters is called ignorance. This is the unknowing of true reality. I don't use this word ignorance. I just use it here because other teachers use it, and it helps you to understand how these teachings that I'm sharing connect into other people's perhaps. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, he wouldn't have used this word, because this is a derogatory word. This is a way of degrading someone and looking down on them. I would never refer to anybody as ignorant. But this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom, this confusion, this misunderstanding, this misperception that the mind has, this is a fetter. This is a pollution that the mind lacks wisdom. It just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. Like probably before you came here, you might not have ever heard anybody tell you that it's your own mind that's causing your anger. It's your own mind that's causing your frustration or your shyness or your bitterness or your hostility. It's your own mind that's causing this. So the mind has this unknowing of true reality. It walks around almost with this veil of unknowing of true reality and confusion, where it goes through the world just believing things, but those beliefs aren't true. And you need to be able to get to wisdom. That's what's going to antidote this. So there's certain lack of wisdom that the mind has. And as long as it has that, all these other fetters are going to stay in place. So one of the things that the mind lacks wisdom about is that these fetters even exist and what they are. Right? So there's so many things that the mind in the unenlightened state lacks wisdom of. So what you're actively doing on the path to enlightenment is learning and growing and developing to cultivate wisdom, because that's what's going to help you eliminate all the other fetters. The way that you eliminate your ignorance is through your practice of the teachings. If you understood the teachings intellectually, you haven't eliminated your ignorance yet. This is where somebody intellectually can understand, for example, that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol. But we still do it, right? Someone might still do it. That's because of our ignorance, our unknowing of true reality. We're still making unwise decisions because of our lack of wisdom. So we can understand something intellectually, but we haven't actually implemented it in our practice to make decisions based on that wisdom. So the way that your ignorance gets eliminated is through your practice of the teachings. You need to do the intellectual learning, then you need to do the reflection, but then you need to practice. And this is where things really transform for you. So do you guys have any questions on these higher fetters? Anything you'd like to ask? Okay. Don't see any questions online either. Okay. So now, once you understand a little bit about the fetters, and by the way, there's a retreat that I teach each year in August, where I spend an hour to an hour and a half on each one of those fetters. I explain what it is. I explain the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. So that's a retreat that I teach, and you guys are welcome to come either here or online. It's completely available at no cost. So that's something that students will need to take at some point if they're interested to get to enlightenment. So as your mind's eliminating these fetters, you're going to move through these 4 stages of enlightenment. It's called stream enter, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. The Buddha referred to it as a stream enter, the first stage of enlightenment, because just like a log enters the stream and it's going to eventually get to the ocean, once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. So that's why you refer to it as a stream enterer. And we might refer to that person as being in the first stage of enlightenment. Then there's once returner. If someone dies in this stage of enlightenment, they will come back to the human realm one more time, and then they will get to enlightenment in that life. That's why it was referred to as a once returner. Then there's a non-returner, where if somebody dies in that stage of enlightenment, they will be reborn into the heavenly world and they will attain enlightenment from there. They won't come back to the human world. So that's why it's called a non-returner. And then during the lifetime of the Buddha, they refer to an enlightened being as an arahant. This is a person who's completely purified their mind of the 10 fetters. We would probably refer to this person as an enlightened being. So you're not enlightened until you actually experience complete purification of the mind. And then there's something called a Buddha, which is not a stage of enlightenment. I'll explain to you guys what this is. It's a very unique individual. So I'll explain to you guys this. So the first stage of enlightenment, an individual has eliminated the first 3 fetters: personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior and observances. And because of that, the discontentedness that you were once experiencing when you were off the path to enlightenment has significantly diminished. It's a mere fraction of what it once was. So you're going to notice this. When you get into the first stage of enlightenment, you're not going to just stumble your way into the first stage of enlightenment. There would have been active training and development to get into that first stage of enlightenment. And you would have eliminated these 3 fetters, along with learning and practicing to train your mind in other aspects of the teachings. And you'll notice the significant decrease in the type of discontentedness that you're experiencing. You're still having discontentedness, but it'll be significantly diminished. And if you die in this stage of enlightenment, you'll come back a maximum of 7 times in order to then make your way to enlightenment. Then there's a once returner who has already eliminated the first 3 because they've eliminated that up here, but then they've thinned out number 4 and 5, sensual desire and ill will. So if you're noticing that you have, say, for example, less interest in sex, or you're not as angry or hostile, as bitter as you once were, that's the mind decreasing its central desire and ill will. So an individual who's a once returner, they also have experienced a significant decrease in their discontentedness, but they still are experiencing discontentedness because they still have pollutions that are in their mind. By the time you get to the 3rd stage of enlightenment, this is referred to as a non-returner. This individual has eliminated the 5 lower fetters. And this person is very rarely experiencing discontentedness, like once every 2 months, once every 3 months, once every 6 months. It's very infrequent and it's very insignificant when it occurs. It might last for 30 seconds to a minute, and then it's gone and it's out of the mind. And the individual is going to know exactly why it's happening, and they're going to be able to address it right away. So in this stage of enlightenment, sometimes people can get a little bit complacent because you're not experiencing much discontentedness. It's very infrequent and very insignificant when it's occurring. So you need to be very diligent when you're in this stage of enlightenment to apply all the practices that got you there, continue to apply those, and making sure that you're not overlooking any of the pollutions or any of the discontentedness that's in the mind. By the time someone gets to this stage of enlightenment as an arahant, they've completely purified the mind of all the 10 fetters. They are not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. It'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. There's no discontentedness, no anger, no frustration. Not even the slightest little ickiness is in the mind. The mind is always bright and cheerful and uplifted. It's glad that there's nothing that can occur that's going to shake up your mind in the slightest little bit. Okay, so this is referred to as an arahant, but we would probably refer to this person as an enlightened being. Now, some things to share with you about a Buddha, which is not a stage of enlightenment, but it's a rare individual. This type of individual only exists very rarely in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So today you'll find people that will tell you everybody's a Buddha, right? Or you have Buddhahood, or you have Buddha nature. The Buddha never said that, right? That's what people are saying today based on a lack of wisdom of understanding what a Buddha is. What a Buddha is that they meet three primary criteria, and then there's some others as well. The first criteria is that they've gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then, having gotten to enlightenment by themselves, they will dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three primary criteria of what make a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. The way that they're able to get to enlightenment by themselves is they have a profound memory. They can deeply have memory and recall of things that have happened in this life and in previous lives as well. And that's how they actually get to enlightenment by themselves, is they accumulate all this wisdom to be able to bring it forth, to be able to then figure out how to get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides. The way that you might think about it is that the average being, they have like a certain size hard drive in their mind, 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte or something like this. And now when your disk fills up, you need to delete old files in order to store new files. This is why if you think back to your childhood, you probably just have spotty memories, where in the last 5 or 10 years or so, you have a pretty good recall of what you've been up to. But if you think back to your childhood, you've had to delete those files in order to store these new files, and that's why you have spotty memories. But an individual who's going to become a Buddha, even in the unenlightened state, will have a unlimited capacity to remember things. And now their mind, being able to remember things from their current life and their past life, they'll put all that wisdom together to be able to help them get to enlightenment in their last life. This individual can also quickly determine the condition of somebody else's mind by spending time with that person. They can observe the fetters in somebody else's mind, and then they can share teachings with them that's going to help them to be able to make improvements. But they would only do that if the individual was interested in learning and developing. They're not going to just go around and give unsolicited guidance to people. Then an individual who's a Buddha, they are a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever they teach, they're going to be practicing those same things as well. So they're teaching just as much through their actions as they are through their spoken words. And a Buddha understands this, that their students are learning through their actions. So if they're teaching things like right speech, they're going to be practicing right speech. Or if they're practicing certain moral conduct, if they're teaching certain moral conduct, they're going to also be practicing that as well. So this is what a Buddha is. And we refer to this individual as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. And the reason why is because an individual who gets to enlightenment that is learned from another teacher, not a Buddha, but learned from a teacher, this individual would have a certain amount of baggage that they've learned. Certain things, maybe they've gotten to enlightenment, but maybe like 10%, 20% of what they learned didn't actually lead to their enlightenment, but they're still doing those things. So their mind is completely peaceful and joyful, but maybe only 80 or 90% of what they learned actually led to their enlightenment. So they still have this a little bit of extra baggage around, just out of respect for their teacher. They're continuing to do those particular things. Where an individual who's a Buddha, who doesn't have any teachers, they're not going to have this extra baggage. So if they try a certain meditation and it works to improve the condition of their mind, they know that that's part of the path to enlightenment, and they retain it as part of the wisdom that needs to be taught in order to get to enlightenment. Whereas if they try a certain meditation and it doesn't work to improve the condition of their mind, they will discard it and they will set it aside. And by the time they get to enlightenment, what they know in terms of the path to enlightenment is the path to enlightenment. And then they spend the rest of their life illuminating that path, making it visible for everybody else to be able to see how to get to enlightenment. So this is what a fully, perfectly enlightened one is that they don't have this extra baggage that's around because they don't have any teachers or guides, that what they know about the path is exactly the path to enlightenment. And they spend the rest of their life helping other people to understand that path. So this is very rare in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. Okay. Now, just to kind of finish this topic up, the last thing that I'll share with you guys is how to know that your mind is not enlightened. This is a good way to help you learn something, is first teach you what it is and then teach you what it is not. And this is going to help you to understand what it is. So if you experience what's called conditioned feelings, then you know that your mind is not enlightened. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. And when I say conditioned feelings, it's important to understand that what I'm talking about here is based on some condition. Because sometimes when people see this, they're like, hold on a second, an enlightened being isn't happy? Like, what are you talking about? You need to understand what a conditioned feeling is, like I was talking about at the beginning. Based on some condition, you will then be happy. Right? It's sunny outside and now I'm happy because it's sunny. But then when the sun is gone, I'm sad or frustrated or angry. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. The conditionality of these feelings means that they are impermanent. They arise, they change, and they fade away. The happiness is based on some condition. My bank account balance is here, I'm happy, right? So the unenlightened being has certain expectations in their mind, certain things that they want, and they can only be happy when they get those things. But when those things aren't occurring, they're not happy. They're frustrated or angry, right? By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be always happy, always cheerful, always bright and glad and uplifted. There's no condition that needs to be met. If it's sunny outside, okay, great. You already happy before it was sunny. It's raining outside. Okay, it's raining. No big deal. I'm not going to form my feelings on that, right? Or your mom's alive. Okay, I was already happy before she was alive. Okay, she's passed away. Okay, I understand. It was wonderful to have her in my life. And this was really great that I had this relationship with this woman, but I'm not going to be sad or angry or frustrated when this person has died. I still love this person. I still care about this person, but I understand she is impermanent and she cannot be permanently in this world. And I'm not going to form my feelings based on whether she's in this world. I'm going to be happy. And if she dies, I'm going to be sad. That's what the unenlightened mind experiences. But the enlightened mind can be cheerful and bright and uplifted despite the fact that mom has passed away. Right? So an enlightened being is beyond the conditionality of this. Their mind is always experiencing the mental state of happiness and joy. The mind is just always bright and uplifted. So if you experience these feelings based on some condition, then you know your mind is unenlightened. No big deal. Everybody's born unenlightened, right? You're going to need to apply work and effort to be able to get to that point. If you have a craving or a desire to tell other people that you're enlightened, you know that you're not enlightened. So if you're like hanging around or you're at some retreat and somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, by the way, don't tell anybody, but I'm enlightened. You know right away they're not enlightened, right? Because this is the ego. This is the arrogance, right? It's like, well, hey, you know, if you're so peaceful and joyful, just go be peaceful and joyful. You don't have to come around here telling us that you're enlightened. What do you want? Do you want some admiration? Do you want us to bow down to you? Like, what do you want? Right? If the mind is wanting something like that, then it's not enlightened. And there's conceit, there's boastfulness, there's arrogance and pride in the mind. So you know that this being is not enlightened. But you don't have to tell them that. You don't have to convince them that, right? You might just smile and keep on going about your day. If you notice that there's complacency in the mind, where there's a lack of motivation, initiative, willingness to do something, ambition, enthusiasm, motivation, if you're noticing a lack of these things, you know your mind is unenlightened. Because what the unenlightened mind will do is it'll chase and chase and chase and chase. It'll be like, oh, I know what I need to be better. I need a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Let me chase one of those. Oh, I know what I need. I need some more money. Let me chase that. Oh, I know what I need. I want a new job. Let me chase that. I know what I want. I want to go to Thailand. Let me chase that for a while, right? And you get so excited about this chase. Well, if the mind's not chasing in the unenlightened state, it usually swings to the other side, where it's dull and it's lethargic and it's sluggish and it's lacking motivation and enthusiasm. This is what the unenlightened mind will experience, the swinging back and forth. So if you're noticing that, you know that your mind is unenlightened. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind's perfectly in the middle. It's been purified. It's performing optimally. Your mind's bright and uplifted. You don't get tired and exhausted. Like right now, you might get home from work at the end of your day and you're exhausted. Oh, this was such a hectic day. Oh my goodness, right? But if you went through your day and all your cravings were getting fulfilled, you might be like, wow, this was the best day ever. That's because you were getting what you wanted. But in the situations where you weren't getting what you wanted, you might feel exhausted. That's what the mind does. It swings from side to side. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have that any longer. Your mind is joyful and bright and uplifted. You don't experience tiredness and exhaustion. The mind gets sleepy where you need to sleep, but you don't get tired or exhausted. So this is what you'll know that your mind is not enlightened, is if you're experiencing any of these things. So any questions on anything that I've been sharing with you guys so far? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, please help yourself. Remember, those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom if you like.
Would it be wise for somebody in the first stages of enlightenment to teach about enlightenment?
The Buddha shares, and I agree with him, that it would be very difficult for someone to teach the path to enlightenment without either being enlightened yourself or very close to it. Because you'll have craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind still, and you'll have certain central desire, essentially, and you'll get angry and frustrated and irritated. And it would be very challenging for you to explain to somebody else how to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state if you hadn't attained it for yourself. And then also, if you start taking on students, that is going to take you away from your own development and your own growth on the path, because you're going to be spending more time trying to help them rather than developing your own mind. So the Buddha teaches you to cultivate your wisdom, get as close to enlightenment as possible, if not enlightened, before you actually start teaching. And then that way, you'll know that you've gotten to where you need to be. You'll know the wisdom of what it takes, and you'll be able to help people get to that enlightened mental state. It's kind of like, would you be interested in learning how to drive a car from someone who's never driven a car before? Or would you like to learn from someone who's been driving for 15, 20 years and maybe has some experience even teaching, right? So that's the person you'd probably like to learn from. Mm-hmm. You have a question?
Yes, so I've been practicing for a while. I'm very interested about the stream enterer and the stream enterer.
Mm-hmm.
How to know how far you are from reaching it? How can you evaluate yourself, or maybe you need a teacher to see kind of how far you are, basically.
Yeah, so by the time you get to stream entry, you would know what it takes to get to stream entry, and you would be able to identify that. So in January, I teach a retreat where I teach you every single thing you need in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So there's various things that I could share with you. And at the end of that retreat, I teach you how to know that you've actually attained stream entry. If you'd like to come up after class, I'll show it to you so you can learn it. And then I'll guide you to the resources to be able to learn how to get to that first stage of enlightenment. Mm-hmm. All right. I don't see any other questions anywhere. Okay. So what I'm going to do then is just end class here by thanking all of you guys for joining. I appreciate your interest to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting a course at 9 a.m., which is called Harmony in Relationships. It's a Monday through Friday course from 9 to 3 p.m., and you can come to any part of that you like. You don't have to come to the whole thing, but if you'd like to come to the whole thing, you'll surely get more benefit. But even if you'd like to come just for a couple of hours or a couple of days, it's up to you. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be teaching the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha, which you would need to know inside and out, backwards and forwards, in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. I'm going to be teaching you based on the original words of the Buddha. I'm going to be sharing those with you, and I'm going to be teaching it to you and show you how to integrate it into your day-to-day life and actually experience the real results of getting your way to enlightenment, because the Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment. And then there's other topics in that course as well. It's all based around creating harmony in your relationships, because as an unenlightened being, oftentimes we experience disharmony in our relationships. And this can be a real struggle, whether it's a life partner, whether it's your children, your parents, your siblings, your coworkers. You probably have some challenges in your relationships, and that can all be improved through the cultivation of wisdom and through training of your mind. So if you'd like to learn that, you can learn it here. You can learn it online, because I'll be live streaming that as well. And on Wednesdays, I teach meditation starting at 9 a.m. and then I teach a class. So this week it's going to be 9 to 3 each day. You can come here and you can learn if you'd like. And then on Friday, we have movie night. This is where we come together at 6 p.m. here at the temple and we watch a movie. We're happy to watch a documentary on the life story of the Buddha this Friday. We're going to have our popcorn machine turning out seasoned popcorn and all this kind of stuff. So if you'd like to come, or you have friends or other people that would like to come, you're more than welcome to come here for the movie if you'd like. So that's what we've got planned over the next several days. If you'd like to see what we've got our schedule on the bulletin board there, and our website has our events calendar as well. So you can see all of this stuff either on our website or over there. And if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to me and I'm here to help you guys. So whatever you plan to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.